pain and stress, it really is all in your head, specifically in your brain. Today, I'll show you the brain parts that contribute to pain and stress, and just as importantly, those that reduce it too. So we're going to geek out a little on neuroanatomy, but it's truly amazing to look under the hood and realize that this isn't mystical or out of our control. This is like a garden that needs proper care and sunlight in the form of nutrition and activation to grow healthy. So join me on this journey to become a master gardener of your brain. So let's start with this big guy back here, the parietal lobe, where sensory information comes together somewhere around here. Most of the sensations get contrasted, compared, and processed for further processing in other brain areas. The information combined includes sight from occipital lobe, back here, receiving sensation from the eyes, sound from the temporal lobe, down here, receiving sensation from ears, and body sensation from the sensory strip of the parietal lobe, right here, receiving pressure and stretch, hot, cold, and chemical irritant signals from the body. Now, the frontal lobe, right here, we represent this with, in the picture, as a front end loader, right? A piece of machinery taking a big scoop of judgment, or the mover of body and mind. This big old frontal lobe starts simply with the motor strip, right here. It's mirrored by the sensory strip of the parietal lobe right next to it. It occupies a stripe down the center with the feet in the midline, deep in the groove. Then we have the legs, the trunk, the arm, the hands, the face, and tongue at the bottom. The motor strip sends signals to muscles that contract or relax out in the body. As we move forward, we enter the more complex processing centers, then the eye movement centers, and finally the thinking centers that make us human. We'll call them thinking centers, since their true names are dorsolateral prefrontal cortex and orbitofrontal cortices. Yes, thinking centers just makes more sense. So this thinking center up here controls executive functions like working memory, which is holding information for a minute later, cognitive flexibility, being able to change your mind, planning, inhibition, which is not doing what you don't want to do, abstract reasoning, motor planning, which is deciding how to move, and organizing thoughts. The orbitofrontal cortex, closer to this area, the thinking area down here, represents emotion, taste, smell, reward, and decision making. You can already see how these thinking parts of the prefrontal lobe would intertwine tightly with the limbic, the deep emotional areas of the brain, which are down in here. The deep brain areas seen in this cross-section image are also important to processing nerve signals. The thalamus, which is back in here, behind this area labeled the regulator, is a relay and processing center or gateway of all that comes to the higher brain centers for almost every sensation we receive. They're represented here with, down here, with the eye and the ear. You can't see it in the tall video, but in the bigger one, you'll see it. The eye, the ear, the foot, the organs, the spine. Actually, the spine is extraordinarily densely supplied with nerve receptors, feeding back into the brain. This is why healthy spine movement is so beneficial to the brain and body health. Smell gets to pass right by the thalamus, though, interestingly, and lands near the memory and emotional centers, which it have a big effect on. So smell comes in, bypasses the thalamus, goes straight into here. So is this why essential oils are so powerful? The thalamus also receives signals from higher brain areas and other deep brain structures, including the basal ganglia, and the cingulate gyrus and the hippocampus. So cingulate gyrus around here, hippocampus up in here. Hippocampus, that's the memory center. We'll talk more about that later. So actually all these deep brain structures communicate with each other and the higher brain centers in an elaborate dance. We'll talk about how we can cut in on this dance all throughout the series. As with all neurons, the thalamus needs proper nourishment and activation to be healthy. That's what this whole series is about. So next, the basal ganglia, also in the center. We're a regulator. It basically acts like the brakes or an accelerator to movement, emotions, and motivation. We know how it contributes to movement disorders because it receives a lot of input from the motor area of the brain. Here, the motor strip. So a lot of this feeds back into that basal ganglia. But it also relates to psychiatric disorders like OCD and schizophrenia for less clear reasons. The basal ganglia is really affected by the immune system, so a healthy gut, nutritionally balanced diet, and renewing mental and physical lifestyle are important. The amygdala, which is right here, right in this area. So the amygdala, what does it do? It processes emotions, attaches emotions to memories, and gives them both more significance. The cingulate, which finishes up this arc, is very similar, and it helps suggest appropriate emotions, appropriate fear, and appropriate pain perception. And the hippocampus, which is behind the amygdala, processes memories. So we put these together and we have the limbic system. This is a super influential area related to pain and fear or stress, along with memories. The hippo here helps us remember the hippocampus, the memory area. The hippo with moose antlers reminds us of the hypothalamus or the hypothalamus. The hypothalamus is involved in sensing changes and making changes in body chemistry. So it regulates long-term body functions and motivational drive with hormones. Okay, now let's see how this works together. There are neurological pathways like riverbeds that connect the thinking centers in the upper brain with the deep brain regulators. So this loop, or this riverbed, is a bit like a lazy river that keeps recirculating, but with modifications to the flow at certain junctions along the way. There's also a lazy river neurological route for movement and one for sensation. And this is where people get stuck in pain, stress, or muscle physical cycles. This is where we must work to break those cycles, to turn the chronic protective depleting cycles into comfortable renewing cycles. And it can be done, but it does take work. So let's get to work. Join me for the next video, or just come into the office and we'll take care of you personally. Have a great day. May God bless you.